Hey everyone, it's Michael Kikle. I hope you're doing well today, and of course, as you can tell, my voice is still not at 100% yet. Anyway, today I'm going to be reviewing a book involving Mr. Wolverine, a character that I've loved ever since I was a very young kid, but this is the thing. I haven't read much of individual Wolverine stuff, much X-Men stuff, and I've always kind of wanted to. The only thing I've really read was a collection of issues called Wolverine Logan, which I think was written by Claremont, if I remember correctly. And aside from that, and aside from a random one-shot from like Marvel Ultimate or Ultimate Spider-Man Team-Up or Ultimate Team-Up, whatever the thing was called, was Spider-Man and Wolverine, that's about all I've ever read of Wolverine. Most of my exposure to this character, like many people, is the movies with Hugh Jackman, is the cartoons like X-Men 90s animated series or Evolution, and that's about it. But I've always wanted to read more about him. And on my Nook and on my Kindle, until my Nook recently had that being too old situation, and it was obsoleted by Barnes & Noble, where I can't read any of my shit unless I buy a new Nook or buy an iPad or something. Ever since that happened, I was kind of pissed because I had a lot of Wolverine trades on that Nook that I wanted to read. But I still have some on my Kindle, like this book I'm about to talk about, that I wanted to get around to at some point, and now I finally did. I've been sick, as many of you know, had a lot of free time. I've been trying to watch movies and stuff, but when I didn't feel like that, I was reading some comics, some manga, and I've been on a trip recently to Tennessee. And while I was there, my wife and I read a lot in a cabin, so I read quite a bit of comics there, too. I plan on reviewing to catch up, but there's a lot of content, man. Anyway, now after 2 minutes of rambling, let's talk about Wolverine Weapon X. Now, this is written and drawn by Barry Windsor-Smith. It seems like, according to the credits page, that this came out in like either the late 80s, mid 80s, somewhere in there, or the 90s. I'm not really sure. Didn't do any research. Who cares? Most of you guys watching this will probably know the truth anyway. I am familiar, obviously, with Weapon X from X-Men 2, from X-Men Origins Wolverine, from the one little 10-minute scene of escape in Apocalypse, and that's about it. And I think the cartoons covered it a little bit too. But that's really it. I didn't really understand what this book was going to be, and I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest with you. This is, for people who don't know, this is typically considered one of the ultimate perfect classical Wolverine stories outside of like a Claremont run, and I think this was post-Claremont, if I remember correctly. I don't know how I feel about the book, like I said. Up front, I think that the art can be good, but most of the time I don't like it. To tell you the truth, this has the same sentiment and feel of an experimental art house movie. So from the get-go, I'm like, not impressed. You know what I mean? There's only a few art house films I like out there in the world, like Eraserhead from David Lynch. Not really a fan of much else outside of that, or Antrim, the deadliest film ever made, which is kind of an experimental horror film, but kind of not. This is such a bizarre way to approach this story, and I think it was hinted at over the years by different writers like Claremont, so on and so on, about the history of Wolverine, what happened to him, what made him have the adamantium in his skeleton. A lot of you are going to think you know about this book if you haven't read it. You're going to think you're going into this, in this review or whatever, knowing everything that's going to happen here. And believe me, you don't. Believe me, you don't. I thought I would know, and I don't know. And there's, in my opinion, a good reason why this has never been adapted, let's say word for word, panel for panel, page for page, because I don't think it's that interesting to begin with. I thought it was a cool concept, obviously, from all the things I had seen and heard over the years. And I'm sure this has been readapted over and over again in the comics. More than likely, everything has been. But this essentially is Wolverine getting kidnapped randomly, having his body shaved. Yes, his whole body from head to toe shaved. And then he basically is held captive as an experiment. And these people try to brainwash him and everything, but while they're trying to put the adamantium into him and make sure that they're turning him into their own weapon as a company, as a secret corporation, behind the scenes, Illuminati type, but not really, but there's hints that that could be what's going on. While they're doing that, from the get-go, after they shaved him, his hair starts growing back to the length it was. Is that a Wolverine thing? Like, does his hair do kind of like a Goku thing? Like, I thought with Saiyans, like, you cut their hair, it stays cut off. I think GT established that, if I remember correctly. But, like, Wolverine's hair just grows to the same length, and it just stays there? What the hell? His hair is wild in here, by the way. I don't like how the hair has to regrow. I understand skin, bones, fingers, limbs, blood. I get all that. I don't get the hair thing. But anyway, that's the first tip-off to the team of people, the scientists who kidnapped him and begin to run these tests on him, trying to turn him into a weapon. He is number 10, according to the legend that I've always heard. I don't know how many people they've already been through in the book. I don't think it ever states. Weapon X might just be a name, not meaning Weapon 10. I could be wrong about that. Maybe I missed something. I don't know. But like I said, this is the first time I've ever read this, so if I missed something, forgive me. But they immediately recognized that they didn't realize at first that he was a mutant, and maybe that's why he could survive these Weapon X trials. And the things they do to him, the equipment they use on him, like the very famous helmet that we've all seen a million times when we talk about Weapon X, and I think he wore it in Apocalypse too, if I remember correctly in the movie. That is all to not so much... It's kind of a brainwashing tactic, very much like Bucky from Winter Soldier. It's kind of like that, but it's also like Wolverine is clearly still in there, but the problem is that this book does not really tell you the story from the perspective of Wolverine. We're actually observing most of the story from the scientists and guys doing this shit to Wolverine in the room where they're holding him captive, in the building where they're holding him captive. And it being experimental art house, you might wonder why I brought that up. It's kind of because sometimes you don't know what's real, and sometimes you don't know what's supposed to not be real until it's revealed. And you can have entire issues in this book happen and not realize just out of the blue, hey, this was never real. And you're like, what the hell? Like, I don't like when books, movies, novels, anything decide to kick your fucking feet out from under you and lie to you and then pull this. Can I also complain, too, that the scientists, when they're doing their experiment on Wolverine at the beginning, and even a lot through the book, but especially at the beginning, when they keep feeding things into him with the essentially Bacta tank they have him in at first, when his hair regrows, I talked about, when they do that, they essentially keep using the word feed over and over and over again. And then sometimes you get lost on what part of the panel you were supposed to read first. Sometimes word dialogue bubbles will go like in a U formation around the whole page, and it gets kind of confusing sometimes, and it gets a little, I don't want to say overwhelming, that's not really the case. It's a pretty heftily wordy book, but it just gets obnoxious in the formatting of how the dialogue boxes work a lot of the time, and constantly having the word feed, standby, feed, standby, feed, standby. Dude, it drives me fucking crazy. It just gets on my last nerve as I read the book. And having weird art that sometimes can be cool and sometimes just really gets on my nerves, I guess because of the book itself, I guess is why I get annoyed with a lot of the art too. That stuff really rubs me the wrong way as I read this book. And I feel like at the end of the day, I didn't enjoy it. Like, I know this is considered a classic. It's before my time, before I even existed on the planet. But I just thought it sucked. I thought it really didn't have a whole lot to offer. Barry Windsor-Smith clearly has talent. There's a couple of really badass Wolverine scenes. And there's even a couple of moments that make you feel kind of sad deep down about what, like, the head professor running this whole operation wants his team to do to Wolverine. And you even have, like, this one female character in here who is, like, constantly telling everybody, hey, if you look into his eyes, you can see he's still human. He's not just some beast or animal just because he's a mutant. but the rest of the scientists don't really look at it that way. But she's still involved, and I don't really have any sympathy for her, much less anybody else in the room who are the clear-cut villains. They're trying to make her kind of a last good chance for Wolverine. I think she should be killed. That's what I'm saying. I think that the book tries too easily to not give you the perspective of Wolverine, which is the obvious thing any comic nowadays would have done. Because of the writing and everything, people would have done that. So in one respect, I kind of like that he's not our eyes into the story, but he kind of isn't, but he kind of is at the same time. We're watching what's happening to Wolverine throughout the book, and it's kind of like animal abuse. I don't know how to explain it, but it feels like that sometimes. And I was not into the book, man. It wasn't because of that. It was just, it didn't really work for me what it was trying to do. And maybe it'll work for most people, because it seems like a lot of people praise the hell out of Barry Windsor-Smith and this book, but I'm not going to be one of them. I'm not going to. I wanted to love this more, and the art and the way the story was told are what really put me off completely. I hope that maybe the Claremont run that I think came out before this will be better. That Logan book I talked about I read was really good. I loved that. I thought it was amazing. But I'm hoping other Wolverine books I read from my Kindle and Nook will have a better impression on me than what I read here. This is one of those books to me that are so overhyped for no real reason. Kind of like Watchmen, kind of like Dark Knight Returns. I like Dark Knight Returns more than Watchmen, for the record, right now. But those books are incredibly overrated. Everything from the art to the book itself. And then you have things like this that come around that are a little bit more linear in storytelling. And I don't like it either. You know? I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. I'd love to hear what you all have to say about Wolverine Weapon X down below. Let me know, man. I've looked up some reviews on YouTube. There's not a ton of reviews for this that I was given from search results. But I don't see the appeal, man. I just don't. It was a really cool idea for a story, but I think the execution has dropped so heavily that it feels like what happened to the X-Men Origins Wolverine movie. A lot of people I've heard say they wish that movie had just been this adapted 100%. You're fucking crazy. If you thought this would be a good movie, I'm sorry. I disagree heavily. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this book. I'd love to hear everything you have to say down below. Thank you all for watching, guys. Sorry about still being sick and making this review. Hopefully I can make some more content you'll enjoy too. So anyway, thank you all. God bless you again. Goodbye.